Hey, welcome back to Well, That's Interesting, the What the Hell Are You Talking About edition. Today is episode 247, that time Black Widow Venom entered through a woman's eyeball, and sometimes worms get together to form a superorganism. My friends, if you've been listening to the show for the past 2 weeks, then you know that during that time, we were blessed with 4 experiments whose subjects sounded downright wacky. But underneath the surface, they revealed absolute wonders, like the extraordinary biology of a misunderstood creature, the viscosity of a substance unparalleled to any other, one-way submarines orient themselves underwater, and how fruit flies can get hooked on cocaine. Now, if none of this sounds familiar, you've got quite the audio lineup for yourself after this. But today I'm proud to say the topics we're going to cover are simply downright wacky. And both include what one may call chance, fate, or fortune. In the first half of the show, pack your bags and your finest stethoscope. We are slipping into the old time machine and heading on back to the Aquanet-filled 80s and landing on Old Medical Oddities Lane. And if you're a long-time listener of this show, then you also know that 1, envenomation by spiders is usually the result of a direct bite, and 2, that I moved to Maine. And that means I have a shed, and that shed belongs to the gigantic spider inside it. Stick with me. I aptly named her Bertha, and she's 3 inches in diameter. And if that sounds too big, you are right. The average tarantula is 4 inches in diameter. Well, having such a personal experience, it is no surprise to me that when a husband and wife team made the mistake of cleaning out their shed together, they ran into a spider themselves. And because this show is this show, it's no surprise that the end result was a visit to the emergency room. How they got there, though, will make you facepalm. We will go over the symptoms felt and exhibited by the female patient and how quickly they developed. We will go over the treatment and the theories as to how in the holy hell Venom ended up in her eye without a direct bite. And we will meander through too many fun facts about Black Widows and how many people have run-ins with them every year. Sheds are great. They're great. Then after the break, you'll never know what you're going to find diving into rotten fruit in an orchard, which was a mission accepted by Dr. Serena Ding, senior author of a paper that we're going to bite into, and group leader at the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior. Good old Dr. Ding was also joined by her colleagues, including Ryan Greenway, a biologist at the University of Constance, and first author Daniela Perez, a postdoctoral researcher at Max Planck. Now, this discovery may sound as small as the creatures they studied, but we're going to see how they're way more complex and social than we thought. For you see, individual worms 1 millimeter in length, or 0.03 of an inch, were spotted forming these writhing towers in the wild for the first time. Now, for comparison, and as a helpful visual, short grain rice is usually, 5 millimeters in length? These are 1 millimeter. These barely existent creatures were coordinated, moved as one, responded to touch, and used this towering method to solve problems, like traveling over a gap within a rotting apple. Such coordination has only been observed in slime mold, fire ants, and spider mites, so it's still relatively rare to witness in nature. And to see if this observation was a fluke, the team performed an experiment in the lab with different worms, and guess what happened? That's right. We will crawl around an orchard with Dr. Ding and her team. We will look at the rotten fruit they looked upon. We will poke the tower of worms they poked. We will head back to the lab and perform an experiment with thousands of them, and we will watch their inspirational coordination. In the meantime, hi, I'm Jill Chacha, and if this is your first time listening, welcome to the flock, my elevated business goose. To begin, I'm going to ask you to bring along as many shoulder pads, leg warmers, and parachute pants as you can muster, all while being hit in the face with trickle-down economics Because, that's right, we're about to enter the early 1980s. We've just made a soft landing somewhere in the state of California thanks to wrapping our time machine in nothing but members-only jackets. And although the case report we're covering right now doesn't specifically identify the town, hospital, or patient, don't you worry. I've got enough information about spiders, poison, and injuries to make up for it. So join me, will you? Within a backyard here in Cali on another sunny day. In fact, it's the perfect kind of day to get chores done. Especially the ones you find yourself putting off because they're so off-putting. Like cleaning out a shed that's been neglected for too long. This was the task at hand for an unnamed husband and wife duo who, determined, swung open the shed doors only to be welcomed by what they described as a large black spider. End scene. Now, if you will, imagine the opening of the next scene, and the exterior shot is the entrance to an emergency room of a nearby hospital, a mere 20 minutes away. In that short amount of time, the upper and lower eyelids of the woman's left eye had nearly swollen shut, and the added sensation of burning didn't help much at all. Because this is the United States, the couple had to sit and wait to fill out paperwork, and with each passing line of each form, our 37-year-old female patient began to feel something new. After 10 to 20 minutes of being admitted, a variety of pains flowed south. There was soreness in her neck, followed by nausea and cramps in her abdomen, with her thighs and calves tightening. After 2 hours, her arms were targeted and began tingling. Her body essentially became a piñata of problems. But luckily for our patient, the source of these problems was no mystery at all. During analysis, the first thing she mentioned was coming face to face with a black spider the size of a silver dollar. Asked if she had any direct contact with it, she answered with a surprising no. No, it wasn't hiding in a gardening glove or boot. It wasn't in a woodpile or an empty flower pot, which are all places certain spiders like to call home, and thus surprise an unsuspecting human who grabbed it. Oh, no. Our patient did no such thing. As reported by Mindy Weisberger of LiveScience.com, after finding the spider in the shed, her husband gave it a look, and at that moment, he decided two things. Two things of which only one was maybe correct. First, he determined that the spider was a black widow. And second, he then proceeded to take care of the spider with a hammer. Yes, you heard me, a hammer. According to the case report, titled Spider Poisoning Through the Conjunctiva, after one forceful blow, quote, which splattered the spider in all directions, end quote, the creature's remains were then impossible to conclusively identify. And worst of all, a fragment of the arachnid flew into the woman's eye, which caused immediate pain. So, here we are. And I can see your reaction from here. It says, you gotta be kidding me. Are you telling me, thanks to this decision, enough Black Widow venom flew through the goddamn air, was absorbed through her eye tissue, entered her bloodstream, and it reached other parts of her body? If you thought that, amongst other things, yeah, you are right. But before we get into what kind of venom it was, how it works, and how it's taken care of, let's learn a little bit more about our discreet beauty, shall we? Excellent. The Black Widow, or Latrodectrus mactans on her government ID, is identified by her characteristic shiny body, her large round abdomen, and striking red or orange hourglass-shaped marking on the underside of said abdomen. Now, that marking is truly apt, as it seems to symbolize how time is up for the male of this species, as any direct interaction usually leads to an awful death. Males, by the way, are not black, but brown or gray with small red spots, but who gives a fuck? Today is all about these relatable ladies, whose homes are a hot, messy tangle, who spend most of their time hanging upside down waiting for prey, and whose venom is 15 times stronger than a rattlesnake's. And if you're wondering how our patient isn't dead yet, well, good news. For real. Black widow spiders inject a very small amount of venom when they bite. Estimates suggest it's around 0.02 milligrams. For contrast and context, the average venom yield per rattlesnake bite is around 250 to 350 milligrams, with a lethal dose for humans falling between a mere 40 to 70 milligrams. Hers, though, is a scant 0.02. So, if you accidentally upset a widow, your chances of survival are good. In a 2023 survey evaluating over 23,000 cases of people bitten by black widow spiders, just 1.4% experienced life-threatening symptoms. And speaking of bites, about 2,600 are reported each year, making them responsible for, quote, most of the clinically significant envenomation among all species of spiders, end quote, from the National Institutes of Health website. And it's so good to see that still up and running. And you know what? Let's give these spider ladies a round of applause. The most clinically significant envenomation among all species of spiders. That deserves, yes, please, clap. Now, what makes our patient's case so unique is, of course, the fact that fragments of the spider entered her eye, and that was enough to cause the same symptoms as a whole-ass bite. Now, it sounds absolutely improbable, but it's true. Black widow bodies are not to be reckoned with, and at the very least, not smashed with a goddamn hammer. According to the case report, research dating back to 1888 was very 1888, and it found that soft body parts of black widow spiders could poison a horse when injected into the animal. Yeah. And a 1971 study found that her eggs and the bodies of her hatchlings are also highly toxic. So in sum, quote, contact with the black widow spider or any of its body parts are potentially hazardous. Anyone exposed to Latrodectrus venom, body parts, or eggs should be observed until his well-being can be assured, end quote. Well, before we get into our patient's well-being, a quick word on how this here venom works. And we kinda sorta think we know. So, if you drop whatever non-venomous creature you're holding right now and pick up your phone to tap on today's post over at the old socials, you'll see a handy-dandy graphic of two nerve endings, side by side, one of which is being invaded by the black widow venom, aptly called alpha-lexotroxin. Nailed it. Here, it's represented as green rectangles, and boy howdy, as you can see, it slips right into receptors along that nerve, like a key. And like a key, it opens a doorway, allowing a fucking avalanche of calcium ions to enter. And this is very bad. A sudden massive influx of calcium ions into nerve cells leads to an excessive release of neurotransmitters like dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. In this case, too much of these good things results in a cascade of nerve disruptions, a kind of overload that shows up in the form of muscle spasms and all the pain that we just talked about. So what the fuck does one do in a situation like this? Well, you get ye to a hospital. As reported by Mindy Weisberger of Live Science, doctors injected the patient with 50 milligrams of Benadryl, an antihistamine that reduced the swelling in her eye, and for her other symptoms, the physicians recommended an intravenous dose of calcium gluconate. So yeah, more calcium, but this is a calcium salt, typically used for conditions like cardiac arrest or cardiotoxicity. Essentially, it affects calcium channels by clogging them up, and the toxin can no longer act like that bastard key. Despite this, the patient declined the treatment, saying that she could manage the discomfort without the additional intervention, and I'm assuming that's because her rage and anger at her husband was enough to help her ride this part out. Anyway, within 3 hours, she was discharged with some eye drops containing the steroid hydrocortisone to reduce any further swelling. She was also given an antibiotic called neomycin to help prevent any bacterial infection. And it all worked. But it took some time. Get this. The patient said swelling was gone within 48 hours after she left the hospital, but her eye remained red for 5 days. For about 3 days after discharge, she continued to experience cramps in her stomach, legs, and in her neck, and the nausea lasted for about 7 days. So please, don't hammer a spider. After the break, we are leaving solitary black widows for tiny worms who know that teamwork makes the dream work. An absolute first is next. Stay tuned.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me, serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is brought to you by Indeed. When your computer breaks, you don't wait for it to magically start working again. You fix the problem. So why wait to hire the people your company desperately needs? Use Indeed's sponsored jobs to hire top talent fast. And even better, you only pay for results. There's no need to wait. Speed up your hiring with a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
And we're back. We are so back. And my friends, if you've ever wondered what a town would look like if you smashed old world Germany and Switzerland together, fear not. You can now rest. Please join me, will you, in the medieval district of Niederburg, within the city of Constance, with a K and a Z. And for my fellow geographically challenged Americans who may be wondering where this is exactly, and if you should bring some lederhosen, don't worry. You don't have to, but please, imagine Germany. Danke. Point to the middle of the very southern coast and move your finger just a smidge to the left. Perfect. Here we are in Constance, a literal stone's throw away from northern Switzerland. And now, because I can't help myself, here are a few fun facts about this charming little city. Constance was the birthplace of Count Ferdinand von Zeppelin, the constructor of the famous Zeppelin airships, to which nothing happened. And thanks to the city's extreme proximity to the Swiss border, Constance was one of the few places not bombed by the Allied forces during World War II. So, its eclectic architecture, including medieval, Romanesque, Gothic, and Renaissance splendor, has remained intact. And because Germans love a good orchard, girl, we've got them too. Constance has apples and pears galore, and because of that, it attracts all the wildlife one would come to expect, like roe deer, foxes, and squirrels, for example, who make them a quick snack. In the apple cores and the pear cores left behind, worms find their way in, and boy howdy, if you're hot for worms, like Dr. Serena Ding of the Max Planck Institute of Animal Behavior, you're in fucking luck. During the late summer and autumn months of last year, Dr. Ding and her group, including Ryan Greenway, a biologist at the University of Constance, found themselves on all four and having the goddamn time of their lives with digital microscopes and rotting fruit. Driven by sheer curiosity, what they would find, they had no idea. But as it turns out, that's all they needed to make a first-of-a-kind discovery. Quote, "I was ecstatic when I saw these natural towers for the first time," said Dr. Ding in regards to video footage sent to her from Ryan. Quote, "For so long, natural worm towers existed only in our imaginations. But with the right equipment and lots of curiosity, we found them hiding in plain sight." End quote from an interview with the deliciously named Paul Smaglik of Life Science. Oh, my wobbly business goose. What the Ding is referring to are recordings of wild nematodes, or worms a scant millimeter in length, joining forces to form vertical towers, a behavior only seen in laboratory conditions and thus considered probably not innate. And I can see your face from here. It has the expression of, so the fuck what? Who cares if tiny worms form slightly larger towers? What's the big deal? And well, if you ask this, I'm so glad. Drop whatever non-nematode thing you're holding right now and pick up your phone, head on over to today's post on the old socials and swing past all these spidery images. Oh, sorry about that. I should have given you a heads up. Anyway, swipe until you see what is probably a confusing image at first. That is an extreme close-up of a hole in an apple. And in the center of that image, hanging from a morsel, are dozens upon dozens of worms fused together as one. Yeah, that individual, that long silvery creature, is actually a superorganism, a collection of creatures. And if you so fancy to watch it move, you can head to the Tube of You and search Nematode Tower and watch it jiggle. I'll give you a sec. Now this here tower was constructed by 44 members of the Caenorhabditis species, and it wasn't alone. Not one, not two, not 20 or 30 towers were found, but a whopping 52 towers, each made of an average of 14 individuals from the same species, were there. 52. And why they were doing this, Ding and the team could only speculate. As such, an experiment was in order. Please, join me now, will you, at the team's laboratory where further analysis of these worms could take place. Quizzically enough, even though researchers observed many nematode species crawling around inside the fruit in this orchard, only a single species in the same developmental period participated in tower building. That species was Caenorhabditis, and the larval stage was what was called dower. And don't worry, I gave that a Google. It's basically when larvae go into a type of stasis to survive harsh conditions. And as separate individuals, it's well documented that 1, dower larvae generally remain motionless, but can react to touch or vibrations, and 2, they could stand on their fucking tails, waving their bodies in the air, and attach themselves to any passing animals, particularly insects, enabling them to travel to new food sources. So, is that what was happening here? Were these babies collectively agreeing to move on from rotting fruit to something, more nutritious? And were they trying to, by hitching a ride? And does this behavior of towering only occur in larvae or at any stage when in a bind? To answer these questions, the team did what any one of us would do and poke the towers to see if they responded to touch. And you know what? They did. So check that box. Not only did the worms move, but they did so all together in the same direction, as one. Now, curious about the Uber situation, Ding and the gang introduced adult flies into the petri dishes containing the nematodes, and guess what? Yeah, see for yourself. I have photos over on the old socials to prove that the towers stretched outwards towards the passing flies until they made contact, thus allowing some worms to attach. 5 stars would write again. Now that's impressive, but wait for the piece de resistance. For the final experiment, the team gathered 4,000. I'll say that again, 4,000 worms of various ages of the species C. elegans, and the study's first author, Daniela Perez, a postdoctoral researcher at Max Planck, she dove in first. Quote, Perez stuck a toothbrush bristle into the food-free plate to act as a scaffold, then unleashed the worms. Within 2 hours, the C. elegans formed a tower using the bristle as its spine. Some smaller clusters of worms reached out as exploratory arms, while others bridged gaps between the spaces. And when researchers tapped the top of the tower with a glass pick, the worms wiggled towards that stimulus. The towers are actively sensing and growing, said Perez to Live Science. When we touched them, they responded immediately, growing towards the stimulus and attaching to it. End quote. Yeah, they were... I know, it sounds like a nightmare, but y'all, in terms of just how impressive this is, all of these little worms were like, y'all, there's no food here, so we have to leave. So they collectively decided to build a tower and attempt to latch onto something that could potentially get them out of there. I'm amazed and horrified, and if you are too, well, brace yourself, it gets better. The 4,000 worms formed a total of 323 towers, and a portion of those towers included worms of various ages, proving that all life stages can tower when shit hits the fan. Like when you're stuck in a petri dish with no food, and you need to get out. So, if you ever feel like one worm or one person can't make a difference, just get 4,000 of you together and see what happens. Thank you for listening, rating, subscribing, telling your friends never to use a hammer to take care of a spider. Just don't do it. And then proceed to tell them about this lady and her face. And then just talk about worms, how they join together to solve problems. Even worms, people. Even worms. And a squirmy thanks to the folks over at Airwave Media, the podcast network to which WTI belongs. If you love this show, and you do, you'll love the other podcasts in this family. And please, stay interesting.